देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Thank you. So let's start with chapter 1. Sairam, Sister Geeta, you can start reading it.
Siram. Chapter 1. In Human Form. This is the story of the Lord come in human form. He incarnated as a quiet little village, Puttaparthi by name, 35 years ago. Puttaparthi is a hamlet that has carved out a niche for itself in the hearts of the people of the area, by legends that sanctify the memory and a history that inspires the young. The name is derived from Putta, which means an anthill in which a snake has taken up its abode, and Parthi, which is modified form of Vardhini or multiplier. A thrilling legend endeavors to explain the origin of this place name to the curious inquirer. Long, long ago, the village was known as Gollapalli, a home of cowherds, a designation reminiscent of the Leelas of Sri Krishna and redolent with the music of his flute. It was the abode of prosperous Gopalas, and the cattle of this place were sleek and strong and beautiful to behold. The cows yielded copious milk, thick and sweet beyond compare. Every home was rich in butter and ghee. One day, a cowherd noticed that his favorite cow had no milk in its udder when she returned from the gazing ground on the hills, and when he later secretly watched her movements, he was astonished at her behavior. For she slid out of the shed, leaving her tiny calf to nose about with her sisters, and proceeded in a beeline to an anthill on the outskirts of the village. He followed her to this rendezvous, once to witness an even more astounding spectacle. A cobra issued from the mound, raised itself on its tail, and applying its lips gently to her teeth, drank the milk in glee. Enraged at the loss to which he was subjected by this wily trick, the villager lifted a stone over his head and, taking good aim, heaved it right on top of the cobra. Writhing in pain, the serpent threw an angry curse on all the Gopalas of the village and its Gopalas on the sorry. The serpent threw an angry curse on all the Gopalas of the village, and its last words foretold that the place will soon be full of anthills, which will multiply endlessly. And so it happened soon. The cattle declined in numbers and health. They could not be raised successfully at Gollapalli any longer. Ant hills spread all over the place, and the name has soon changed to Valmikapura, for Valmiki in Sanskrit means an ant hill or Puttaparthi in common parlance. Of course, this gave some satisfaction to the elders of the village, since Valmiki is no other than the immortal who sang the story of Sri Rama and showed mankind the path of perfection. The villagers still show, as proof of this tragic legend, the very stone, thick and round, with a slight jam on one side, which the enraged coward aimed at the wonder snake. The stone has a long reddish streak over it and is pointed out as the mark of the cobra's blood. In fact, the stone is worshipped as Gopalaswami, the lord of cowherd, probably in an effort to avert the curse and help the cattle to prosper. There is a temple in the village built by the Palegars or the landlords of old, where the stone is installed, and generations of men and women have bowed reverentially before it. Strangely enough, that stone had acquired a feature which was revealed by Bhagwan Sri Satyasai Baba some years ago. He directed some people to wash the stone and to smear sandal paste on the jammed side. When this was done, they could discern the clear outline of a picture of Sri Gopalaswami with the world captivating flute at his lips, leaning on a cow. Some unsophisticated rustics swear, even on this day, that they can hear the melody of Krishna's breath passing through the straight and hollow reed. From that day, the curse lost its evil power and cattle began to thrive at Puttaparthi. The bastion at the old fort, which still raises its hoary head in the eastern part of the village, in evidence on its mastery over the surrounding area and the power and the majesty of the Rajus of the place, with the Chitravati descending the gorges and flowing as a moat on one side, set like a green gem in the ring of hills, with temple bells pealing on all the eminences around, enriched by the tank built by Chikkaraya, adjacent to the town that bears the name Tubukka. The far famed emperor of Vijayanagara, Puttaparthi, is the abode of both Lakshmi and Saraswati. Such is the eulogy showered on this place by an anonymous poet of the past. In fact, Puttaparthi was the nursery of pundits and scholars as well as heroes and donors. The Raju family itself was noted for its piety since the day of the renowned sage Venkavadhuta. Not only did they build and endow the Gopalaswamy temple, but even within living memory, the pious Sri Ratnakara Kondamaraju dedicated a temple to Satyabhama, the consort of Lord Krishna, a deity to whom this type of homage is seldom offered in any part of India. He used to say in explanation of this unusual tribute to Satyabhama that he was persuaded to erect the temple by events that occurred during a strange dream. Sri Kondamaraju lived to be a centenarian, and the writer remembers how tears of joy ran down those wrinkled cheeks whenever he recollected the enthralling experience. In the dream, Kondamaraju saw Satyabhama alone, expectant and forlorn, waiting anxiously for her lord, who has gone on an errand to bring her the much coveted parijata flowers. The minutes increased to hours and the hours accumulated into days, but still there was no sign of Krishna. So Satyabhama broke into tears. There ensued a huge storm accompanied by thunder, lightning, and a heavy shower of rain. Luckily, her eyes fell on Kondamaraju, who was passing across the place where she stood, and she asked him to provide some shelter. This led to his determination to raise a sizably large temple for the consort of the Lord. Sri Kondamaraju, he was a pious soul who lived out his 110 years of earthly existence in the unceasing contemplation of the Lord. He was the master of music and of histrionic art. He knew by heart the entire Ramayana, in which is called the Lepakshi version, that is, a series of songs composed by poet from Lepakshi, depicting the incidents in dramatic imagery and artistic luxuriance. He played the role of Lakshmana in all the Ramayana plays enacted at Puttaparthi and other villages of the taluk. In fact, his services to play this role were requisitioned even by far off villages for his depiction of the steadfast devotion and Sharanagati, self surrender of Lakshmana touched the hearts of everyone who witnessed it. He appeared hundreds of times in dozens of stages until age incapacitated him from further repetition of the role. He was a strict vegetarian, prone to observe all the holy vows of the Hindu calendar. He lived in a cottage a little apart from his sons and grandchildren. His hut was a veritable ashram resonant with Ramayana songs. He took delight in gathering around his cot the children of his sons and relating to them the tales of gods and godmen. The children too never left him, for he made every character and adventure live before their eyes through the delight of song and drama. We can be certain that among those children, it was Satyanarayana who was the favorite of the grandfather, for the little boy could sing in a charming musical voice, and he could give even the old man a lesson or two in the art of drama. There was another reason too why Kondamaraju exhibited special affection for Satyanarayana. The little boy hated non-vegetarian food and
What are
did
you doing with
not
the
even
baguette?
stay in the neighborhood when such dishes were being prepared. The boy, even at the age of 6 and 7, was also a very good cook. He was so intelligent and resourceful that he produced the most tasty dishes from the meager larder of the grandfather's cottage, and all this most willingly and very quickly too. Baba says that he could go into the kitchen of the old man and complete the cooking, rice, curries, chutney, and all, in much less time than that was needed by the mother, with two daughters to help her to finish her cooking assignment at her own place. Lord Shiva temple at the birthplace of Baba. In his later days, Kondamaraju was visited by all the devotees who came to have the blessings of Sri Sathya Sai Baba, and when he struggled to stand erect to accept their pranams, one would see a twinkle of joyful thankfulness that the Lord took birth in his family. He lived till 1950 and passed away peacefully, singing to himself aloud the stanzas describing the consolation that Sri Rama gave to the dying Vanara monkey king Vali. Truly a life worthy to be recorded in the annals of saints. His wife, Sri Lakshmamma, has predeceased him by about 20 years. She was a very pious lady whose life was regulated by the religious calendar with its rotation of holy fasts, vows, and vigils. She observed these very scrupulously, despite the worry, expense, and inconvenience, with her eye only on the accumulation of the blessings of the divine forces, which the Shastras promised in return for the regimen. His wife, Sri Kondamaraju, has two sons, Peda Venkaparaju and China Venkaparaju, who were both named after the sage Venkavadhuta. They too inherited his musical, literary, and dramatic capabilities, as well as his piety and simplicity. Of the two brothers, the younger was equipped with larger variety of skills, which cover the fields of literary composition and the preparation of drugs and talismans with the aid of traditional formulae. Peda Venkaparaju was taken once by his parents to the village Kolimigundla by name in the Koilkuntla taluk of Kurnool district. The family had some lands there which had been given on long lease extending to 20, 30, and even 40 years, and the visit was primarily intended to acquaint him with the area and the tenants. But Kondamaraju has also a different aim in view. There were some distant relatives living in that isolated place, and he desired to bring them nearer to Puttaparthi itself. In fact, some miles away from Kolimigundla, they had intimation of the daily danger amidst which those relatives were eking out their livelihood. For just when they were about to enter the Parlepalli forest, some good men warned them to take stronger escort, since the forest had become a nest of dacoits and scarce 2 days prior to their journey, they had murdered in cold blood a family of six, which had innocently walked into their trap. So Sri Subbaraju of Kolimigundla was persuaded to come to Karnatanagapalli village on the other bank of the river Chitravati, right opposite Puttaparthi, though not without the offer of a substantial bribe which Kondamaraju held before his eyes. This was nothing less than a gift to Ishwaramma, the daughter of Sri Subbaraju, as the bride of his elder son, Pedda Venkaparaju. And thus came about the auspicious marriage of Pedda Venkaparaju with Ishwaramma. This happy couple were blessed with a son and two daughters in that order, Seshamaraju, Venkamma, and Parvatama. Some years passed, and Ishwaramma longed for another son. She prayed to the village gods and observed Satyanarayana Puja and kept a number of vows which were rigorous and needed vigil and abstention from food. Sri Sathya Sai Baba once said to a person who requested him to visit his place, "Certainly, having come down from Vaikunta so far, how can I say that I will not travel this short distance?" The Lord in Vaikunta heard the prayer of the mother. He decided on the place where he had to take the human form. He came. Balagopala. He is Shiva, he is Shakti, he must have both Vibhuti and Kumkum. The material sheath with the Lord once again willed to wear was formed. It grew from week to week. Mysterious intimations of the impending incarnation disturbed the even tenor of Venkama family's life. For example, there was a twang of the tambura since the brothers of the father were much interested in the village operas on Puranic incidents, and since one's play or other was always being rehearsed at home, there was a substantially big tambura leaning against the wall and a madala or drum on the floor beneath. These two were silent only when the inmates of the house retired for the night. But as the birth of the son for whom Srimati Ishwaramma prayed announced itself as imminent, the house was awakened at midnight and sometimes even later by the tambura twanging automatically and the madala beating rhythmically as if an expert hand was handling it. Various theories were promulgated to explain this phenomenon by the wise men of the village, but since they only added to the mystery, Vedavenkaparaju hurried to Bukkapatnam, where there was a Shastri, learned Brahmin, on whose interpretation he uh, he could place faith. The Shastri said that it was an auspicious occurrence. It meant the presence of a Shakti, a beneficent power conferring harmony, melody, order, symmetry, spiritual elevation, and joy. On the 23rd of November 1926, the sun was born. It was the time of sunrise, and the villagers were chanting the names of Shiva, remembering that the day was still Kartika Somavara, a Monday of the holy month of Kartika, devoted to the puja and worship of Shiva. That day was made even more auspicious for Shiva worship because the ascendant star was Ardra, and on such rare occasions when the month, the day, and the star coincided, special pujas were performed in the temples of the Lord. The year was Akshaya, the never declining, the ever full. The mother had also just finished, in some hurry of course, her Satyanarayana Puja in accordance with her vows, for even while she was going through the final rituals, the pangs forewarned her. When Ishwaramma announced the pangs, word was sent to her mother-in-law, Lakshmamma, the pious old lady of the house. But it became known that she had gone to the house of the priest to perform the puja of Satyanarayana. The messengers discovered her there and urged her to return, but she was so confident of the grace of Satyanarayana, so steadfast in her devotion, so disciplined in her religious adherence, that she refused to be hustled. She sent word that she would bring with her to Ishwaramma the sacred offerings of after the puja, and that on no account would she interrupt her prayers. She finished the entire ritual with full concentration, came home, gave her daughter in law the flowers and the sacred water. Ishwaramma partook of the blessings of the Lord. Next moment, the Lord was born, and the sun rose above the horizon. Baba has said that one special point to be noted about this manifestation is that the incarnation has not been transplanted away from the place where the body was born, for he had chosen the very place as the center of his elevatory mission. Puttaparthi must have been doubly happy that November morning, for the avatar has chosen the village for his birth as well as his habitation. Indeed, the village, which bears the name Anthill Prosperity, gave the child an appropriate welcome. A snake was there in the lying in room. The woman did not notice it for long, but when the baby, laid on the bed of clothes, was being moved up and down in a peculiar way by something underneath, they watched with bated breath, and when at last they searched, they found a cobra below the bed. The snake was acting the role of Sesha to the Seshasai. The baby was charming beyond description, and no wonder, for it has even in the cradle all the yogic siddhis, which Patanjali says come along with birth itself. Baba had declared that he knew even prior to his birth where he would be born. He has said that he was born with all the miraculous powers which he would later, out of his own will, be manifesting one by one as and when he feels each could be so announced. It must therefore follow that the baby had a halo of splendor around its head, that its smile had an otherworldly beauty and a heavenly power to captivate the heart. Some years ago, Baba told me, I do not sleep at night. I remember that the events of my past appearances, and I laugh within myself as the memories pass across. It can therefore be surmised that the little lilies of laughter and red rosebuds of joy, which lit up the cradle of the baby, bloomed from the reminiscence of previous arrivals and adventures. The baby was named Satyanarayana since the relationship between the puja to that god and the realization of her cherished desire seemed to the mother to be very important. When the Namakaranam naming ceremony was performed and the name was whispered in the ear, it seems the baby smiled, for the suggestion to give that name must have emanated unobtrusively from itself. How else can we explain the fact that the first requisite of spiritual advancement, now propounded by Baba, is Satya itself? The embodiment and exponent of truth could not give himself a more appropriate name. The child became the pet of the entire village of Puttaparthi, and the riots and the cohorts vied with each other in fondling it and feeding it and playing with its lovely silken curls. Its charming smile attracted everyone. Pedavenkaparaju's house was always full of visitors who came on some pretext or the other and stayed on round the cradle, singing lullabies and showering caresses, forgetting their humdrum lives. Soon the fragrance of the jasmine bud filled the air. Like a lighted lamp, Satya moved about the house and laughed, and laughter tinkled in the street where he lisped his sweet vocabulary of sounds. It was noticed by all with wonder that he delighted in having broad vibhuti markings on his forehead and that he insisted on the marks being renewed as and when they wore off. He preferred also to have a circular kumkum dot in the center of his broad forehead, though for fear of the evil eye, the mother seldom satisfied this desire, and so he had to seek out the receptacle from the toilet box of his sisters and himself dab the kumkum on. He is Shiva, he is Shakti. He must have both vibhuti and kumkum, sacred ash and red ochre. He kept away from places where pigs and sheep or cattle or fowl were killed or tortured, or even fish were trapped or caught. He avoided kitchens and vessels used for cooking flesh or fowl. When a bird was selected and talked about by someone in connection with dinner, Satyanarayana, the little boy, would run towards it and clasp it to his bosom and fondle it as if the extra love he poured on it would induce the elders to relent and spare the fowl. He was called by the neighbors Brahmagyani on account of his type of aversion and his measure of love towards creation.
Can I
At
have it?
such times, the boy used to run the Karnam's house, for they were Brahmins and vegetarians, and take the food offered by Subbamma, the aged lady residing there. He rarely retaliated when he was handled roughly by playmates. Information of such ill treatment came to the parents through other toddlers who witnessed the affair, never from Satya, who seemed not in the least to suffer pain or discomfiture. He spoke out the truth always and never resorted to the usual subterfuges
The
with
news.
which fear-stricken children try to cover up their mistakes. So distinct was his behavior that a wag once nicknamed him the Brahmin child. Yes, it was a fitting description. Little did that wag know that while in the previous body, this child, so laughed at now, had declared at Shirdi, this Brahmin can bring lakhs of men on the white path and take them to their destination. At a tender age of 3.5, this Brahmin behaved as if he had a heart that melted at human suffering. Whenever a beggar appeared at the door and raised his cry, Satya left off and play and rushed in towards his sisters to dole out grain of food.
Now
The
phone.
adults were naturally irritated by the endless procession of outstretched hands. They easily lost temper. They sometimes shouted the beggar off before Satya could bring relief. This made the child weep so long and loud that only by bringing the dismissed beggar back could the elders stop the wailing. Sometimes, in order to put a stop to what the elders thought this expensive and misplaced charity, the mother caught hold of the child and, with a finger raised in warning, she said, "Look here, you may give this food, but mind you, you will have to starve." That did not daunt the child. He used to run inside and bring out food to the hungry man at the door and stay away from dinner or lunch himself. Nothing and nobody could persuade him to come to his plate, which was left untouched. But the child had a mysterious visitor who was feeding it. For when he refused food and persisted in refusal for days, his movements and activity showed no signs of starvation. He would also declare that he had eaten, says Ishwarama. He would say that a Tata, an old man, had fed him sumptuously, doling out balls of milk rice. The full stomach was proof of that. Besides, the child volunteered to give another indisputable evidence also. He held out his right hand for the mother to smell, and lo, she inhaled from that tiny palm the fragrance of ghee, milk, and curds of a type she never enjoyed before. The wonder remained, however, who was this Tata, the unseen visitor, the strange nourisher of the little child? When Satya began running about in the street, he sought out the maimed, the blind, the decrepit, and the deceased, and led by the hand to the doorstep of the parents. His sisters had to discover from the store or the kitchen some grain or food and put it into the beggar's bowl, while the little master looked on gladly. Satyanarayana was held up before the children as the ideal by every mother and father so often that the children started referring to him as Guru. The parents and others came to know of this under strange circumstances. It was Ramanavami, Lord Rama's birthday, and late in the night the procession wended in way around the village. A huge picture of Sri Rama was placed on a flower bedecked bullock cart, and the priest sat upon it in order that the flower garlands offered by the householders could be placed on the picture and the camphor they presented be duly burnt and waved in front of the picture. The pipers and the drummers awakened the sleeping villagers, and thus the cart proceeded along the uneven roads. Suddenly, the two sisters discovered that little Satya was not at home. A search was ordered. Men ran about frantically, for it was already past midnight. But attention was distracted just then by the arrival outside the door of the bullock cart with Sri Rama. When the inmates of Pedavenkaparaju's house went to the doorstep, they were surprised to see the 5-year-old Satya sitting on the bullock cart, nicely dressed and with evident authority underneath the picture. They asked the companions why he was seated there on top and not walking with them on the road. Prompt came the answer: He is our Guru. Yes, he is the Guru of the children of all climes and of all ages. There is a small primary school in the village of Puttaparthi, and Satya also used to go there with his contemporaries for something nobler than learning to spell and scribe. The school had at that time an interesting scheme of punishment to ensure punctuality. The lucky child which first comes in and salutes the teacher, as well as the fellow who gets in second, are exempt from the punishment. But even chap who, for whatever reason, legitimate or other, arrives late, it is given a taste of the cane, a number of cuts depending on his place in the list of latecomers. The later, the larger. In order to escape from this torture, the children gathered under the eaves of the schoolhouse much before sunrise, in rain or in fog. Satya saw their plight and sympathized with his shivering playmates. He visited them under the eaves, and bringing shirts, towels, and dhotis from his house, he covered the boys and made them comfortable. The elders at home discovered this, and since they could do nothing else, they locked inside their boxes all the clothes they could not afford to lose. Satyanarayana was a precious child, learning more things than anyone could teach him and much quicker than most. He could sing all the songs and stotras that were rehearsed at home for the village operas and even composed at the tender age of 7 or 8 some touching songs for the cast, which were gladly accepted by them for public presentation.
Thank you, Sister Geeta. Now, Sister Vani, you can continue from chapter 3. But before that, I request all the participants to kindly mute their mics so that we can, like, the voices will not be distracted. Okay, thank you. Sister Mai,
Saira.
you can continue. Yeah, Saira.
Saira. Natana Manohara. At the age of about 8, Satya was declared fit to proceed to the higher elementary school of Bukkapatnam, about 2.5 miles from Puttaparthi. He had to trudge the distance in sun or rain, over stony bunds or slushy fields, or wading through the neck-deep water with a bag of books secured on the head as the season dictated. He had to start early after a meal of cold rice and curds or cooked ragi rice and chutney, delicacies which he still remembers. He carried in a bag the afternoon meal and, with his companions, trekked regularly to Bukkapatnam. He was my student in the 8th standard, says Sri B. Shubhankar in a book published in 1944. As a student, he was simple, unostensious, honest, and well-behaved boy. He continues, unostentatious. With what great self-control must Baba have suppressed his manifold divine powers in order that the world might become ready for the announcement. Sri V.C. Kondappa, another teacher who later recovered the student as divine avatar incarnation, also says in the same book he was very obedient and simple. He never spoke more than the minimum necessary. Coming a little early to school, he used to collect the children and install some image or picture, and with the flowers he had with him, he conducted puja and did arati and distributed prasadam. The boys gathered around him for the things he took out of his empty bag. When asked about it, he said that a certain Grama Shakti obeyed his will and gave him whatever he wanted. One of his teachers was to experience the force of that Grama Shakti on one occasion. Baba was generally listless in class, engaged as he was mostly in what he later described as composing bhajana songs, ashtotra stadhanamavalis, and copying them out for distribution among his classmates. One day, the teacher discovered that Satya was not taking down the notes that he was dictating. He's setting the whole class a bad example, thought he. So he shouted, "Stand up, all those who are not taking down notes." Well, Satya was the solitary culprit. He asked him why he didn't. Satya answered in an innocent, straightforward tone, "Sir, why should I write down? I have understood what you dictate. Ask me any question on it and I shall answer correctly." But the teacher's pride was injured and the boy must suffer for it, he thought. So he ordered that Satya should stand up on the bench and keep standing until the last bell for the day. Satya obeyed, and the whole class hung its head in sorrow. No boy felt happy to sit on the benches that day with their guru poised uncomfortably upon a bench in the same room. The hour bell rang, and the teacher for the next hour came in. He was Janab Mahab Khan, who loved and respected the little boy Satya beyond words. Baba even today extols his Mahab Khan as Pavitra Atma, a highly evolved soul. He taught English, and his approach and method were so earnest and appealing that it seems every boy knew every lesson through and thorough and thorough. Thorough and thorough. He was an old bachelor and he treated Satya with a unique affection, reminiscent of the fakir who fondled the Shirdi Sai. He would press sweets and savories on the boy, persuading him by means of 100 artifices. He would say that his house was specially cleansed for the preparation of the dish because he knew that Satya will not eat anything having the remotest contact with non-vegetarian dishes. He would say that he himself had not taken food yet, for he wanted Satya to partake of it first. He would sit silently for long, stroking Satya's hair and whispering to himself, "Oh Satya, you are a wonderful boy. You will help thousands. You are a great power. or words to that effect. When Mahab Khan entered the room, he was shocked to find Satyanarayana on the bench, the teacher still sitting on the chair. He asked him why he was not vacating the chair. He whispered that when he got up, the chair too rose up along with him. In fact, it had stuck to him. He knew not how or why. The whisper was caught by the boys, who laughed at the teacher's plight and said it must be due to Satya's magic spell. He too suspected so, and Mahab Khan confirmed his suspicions. The boy was asked to come down, and immediately the chair fell off, and the teacher could move about unencumbered by any attached piece of furniture. Years later, while relating the story, Baba said that he willed it to be so. Not so much out of anger against the teacher, for he had no anger in him, but purely to demonstrate himself and gradually prepare men's minds for the announcement of his mission and identity. The little Prince Charming was even in the tender age of a guru to the children of the village, true to the nickname Brahmanyani, which he had earned by his sattvic nature. He showed his precept and example that the little boys of this limited world are quite inferior to the supreme bliss that prayer and concentration can offer and renunciation and contentment can give. He delighted only in stories of saints who reveled in these. Kondamaraju's sons and one of his daughters were all living together, and so Satya grew in the midst of about 18 to 20 children, like Krishna in Vrindavan. It was necessary to be clean and straight child in order to win Satya's appreciation, to get the peppermints that he took out from empty bags. Satya was the example himself. Kondamaraju once told the present writer how, when the tailor was called in to stitch shirts for all the children out of various types of colored cloth that he had been brought from Bukkapatnam Shanti, Satya would say, let everyone be given the clothes he selects. What remains is good enough for me. I am now reminded of a statement he made a few years ago at the Prashanti Nilayam. I have no lands to call my own and to grow my food. Every bit is registered already in the name of someone else. So just as landless persons wait for the village tank to get dry so that they may scratch the bed with the plow and quickly grow something for themselves, I too grow my food, namely joy, in the dry tank beds of afflicted hearts. Kondamaraju, of course, did not realize then the significance of Satya's attitude of renunciation. He just felt proud. Satya was, even as a child, against all sports and games that caused cruelty or pain. He would not allow his companions to witness the bullock cart race on the sands of the riverbed held annually on the festival known as Big Ekadashi, for he objected to the twisting of the tails and the flaying with sticks for the vicarious glory of the master. Years later, I remember one night his calling back to Prashanti Nilayam a party of devotees who had left in a bullock cart. They were proceeding across the river to their cars, which had been parked at the Karnataka Palli on the other bank. Baba waved his blessings and they got into the cart and it crept out of the main gate into the road beyond. Then he sent someone running to fetch the bhaktas back to him. I heard him order bhaktas thus, listen, when you reach the sands, you must all get down and walk across. The blocks should not be forced to drag all that weight through the sands. Do you understand? Bear baiting, cockfighting, and such other village entertainments he condemned as the guru of his group. When a touring talkie pitched its tent in those days at Bukkapatnam or Kothachevruvu, it caused a stir for miles around, and village folk sacrificed their small earnings to meet the expense of seeing as many pictures as they could. Pedda Venkaparaju tried often to take Satya too long with their other children, but he protested and refused. He spoke of the degraded ideals of the cinemas, how they vulgarized the gods and the made of music a muddle. He said they only exhibited the seamy side of family life and praised cruelty, cunning, and crime. Even this day, Baba is a relentless critic of the arts, especially literature and the film, which willfully drag ideals down into the dust in order to accumulate money. When he was about 10 years of age, Satya formed in the village Puttaparthi a Pandari Bhajan group on the model of such as existed in some neighboring villages. The group consisted of about 16 to 18 boys, dressed uniformly in Gerua clothes, holding each a flag in the hand and wearing jingle bell anklets. They all danced to the tune of picturesque folk songs and ballads describing the yearning of pilgrims of Panduranga's darshan, the ordeals of the long pilgrimage, their anxiety to reach the shrine quickly, their joy at the sight of the pinnacle of the temple, etc., in simple, touching poetry. Satya taught the children these and other songs. He added some Bhagavata songs of his own in which the gopis complained to Yashoda of the unceasing pranks of Krishna. Yashoda chides the boy for his thievery and mischief, and Krishna pleads innocence. With Yashoda and Krishna in the center of the circle and with gopis dancing on the circumference, this was a great attraction in the village. Baba himself played the role of either the mother or the child, and his dance, dialogue, music added to the charm of the bhajan. Uravakonda, the Serpent Hill. It was also noticed that he mixed up with these traditional themes, songs on a pilgrimage to a new shrine of which no one had heard, and the majesty of a new deity of whom they had not even faintest idea, Shirdi and Sai. Sai Baba of Shirdi, who could it be? How did this little boy get inspired by that Muslim fakir? The elders wondered as the children danced in the streets. The group collected a subscription of an anna a month from each house and spent the amount on oil for the lamp, which they carried with them when they circumambulated the village, on parched rice, which they gave everyone a prasadam, and on incense sticks, camphor, and other sundries needed for puja. On festival days, or rather nights, they collected heavy amounts, say 2 annas, and proudly brought a Petromax light all the way from Bukkapatnam. The children of Chinna Venkaparaju and others provided the musical accompaniments. Satya was, of course, the central figure of the group as organizer, treasurer, teacher, composer, and lead singer. He did every role so wonderfully that the village could see before their eyes Mathura and Vrindavan reproduced, and Balagopala with his flute enchanting the gopis, the cows and caves, and the calves, the trees, and even the river Yamuna. Once, while a song describing the prowess and achievement of Lord Narasimha of Kadiri, as related in the folklore of the area, was being sung, and the line "From out the pillar of steel, the god as lion jumped" was recited by the group of boys. Satya suddenly leaped like the lion man manifestation of the Lord, and his face was transformed into such ferocity and indignation and benediction that the entire village was frightened, and no one, not even experts in wrestling holds, could control the boy. At last, after a number of people had offered puja and waved camphor and broken coconuts before the manifested Lord, Satya became normal and resumed the song of Kadiri, another intimation. This incident spread the fame of Pandari Bhajan group, for when this group sings and dances, it was told God actually manifests himself, as the villagers of Puttaparthi witnessed. Moreover, it was noticed that when an infection of cholera swept like a poisonous simoom over the area and killed off entire families in the surrounding villages, Puttaparthi did not feel the blast of death, and wise men told one another that the divine atmosphere generated by the bhajan group was responsible. Therefore, the boys were invited to a large number of villages in order to save them from the anger of the gods. Very often, they sent their bullock carts to bring the group, but sometimes the little saviors had to walk 10 or 12 miles, carrying their food with them, resting during the hottest part of the day in some top grove on the way. These villagers too heard the strange names Shirdi and Sai, wondered what and who they were, laid the wonder aside after a few days and plunged in their tasks again. Then there were the dramas. the open-air operas, where Puranic themes were represented by dialogue, dance, and costume, where Rakshasas, Asuras, and the powers of evil were defeated by gods, avatars, and the forces of good. These were written, rehearsed, and produced in the household in which Satya moved. Peddavangaparaju himself had become a celebrity on the popular stage for the role of Banasura, and more for his inimitable depiction of Yudhishthira, the Sattvic follower of Dharma and the never-wavering adherent of the Lord. A number of plays were produced at this period in order to collect funds for famine relief. Banasuram, Ushapparinayanam, Draupadi Manasam Rakshanam, and Kamsavada were the plays most preferred. The eager young boy Satya also took some roles, especially Krishna and Mohini, and the audiences applauded his acting, singing, and above all, his dance. For there was a rhythm in his feet, a sense of time and tune they had seldom seen, a lightness and loveliness which made them feel he never touched the earth, he belonged to some eternal region. The house in Uravakonda where the school-going Sai lived. Within a matter of months, he began to take other roles too. Even after he went over to Kamalapur and Uravakonda for high school schooling, he played these roles. During the vacation, when he resided at Puttaparthi, in the popular story of Kanakatara, he acted the role of Tara so effectively that one night, Iswaramma, who was sitting among the audience in the pandal, rushed upon the stage to prevent what he believed to be the execution of Tara. She forgot that it was all make-believe. He took more than one role in the drama Krishna Leela. He was Devaki, the boy Krishna, and also the danseuse regaling King Hamsa with her dance in the Darbar hall. He also played the role of Draupadi, and he even now describes sometimes with a great deal of merriment how he had to wear 7 long saris, one over the other, and yet appear as if he wore only one. Before long, a professional dramatic troupe visited the area and enacted some musical plays that attracted mammoth audiences. They put their stage at Bukkapatnam and later moved to Puttaparthi, Kothachevru, and Enumalapalli and other big villages, and their performances became the talk of the entire district. They had a girl dancer with the stage name of Rishiendramani, who combined in a series of dance items both gymnastics and music. Her piece de resistance was a dance in which, keeping track of the timing and the tune, she danced with the bottle balanced on her head, bent low, sat, and laid herself on the floor with her back up, bit with her teeth, a kerchief placed on a matchbox on the floor, and with the kerchief between her teeth, sat back again, rose, and stood with the bottle still balanced on the head. A pretty difficult assignment indeed. By long practice, she had trained herself for this tortuous feat. No wonder she won the applause of the people who, wherever she did. Satyanarayana went with others to witness the plays of these professionals, and he too saw this item. Later, after he came home, he tried to do it himself, and to the surprise of all, he could do it without much ado. When the elders asked to be shown this new item in Satya's repertory, he withdrew within himself and hesitated. But the news got aboard, and some enterprising young men persuaded him to agree to dance the famous feat of Kotachervu during the Rathotsavam and cattle fair. They had the temerity to announce that the famous Rishendramani herself will appear in the play, for they felt so confident that Satya will not disappoint them or the audience. The sisters dressed the brother as a girl, completed the hairdo and personal decoration, and took him to Kotacheruvu. Pedda Vangaparaju, who heard about the audacity, became suddenly afraid of the consequences of the foolhardy of adventure into which Satya was inveigled. The curtain rose. Rishendramani tripped her way into the Darbar hall of Kamsa. The audience were too wild with excitement to note any difference. The famous dance piece began. Satya had improved upon it and sustained a needle in place of a kerchief. It was lifted by the eyelids. Yes, Rishendramani of that day did it. but not without dire consequences. The president insisted on pinning a medal on the dancer's person. The mother and others who exulted over the encomia that were showered on Satya, the invitations he received to repeat the feat at other places, and the silver cups and gold medals that were pressed into his hands, became afraid of the evil eye which the boy provoked. And the fears proved true. His eyes had some mysteriously dreadful affliction. They swelled, became red, and exuded tears profusely. His temperature also rose. One night, the mother heard a heavy footstep, wearing wooden sandals, she says, entering the house and proceeding straight to the place where Satya was. She felt it all a mystery. So she got up and went near the boy and placed her hand on his brow to find out the temperature. She found the fever was gone. And the eyes, she brought a light, and lo, they too had improved beyond all expectations. Satya was quite well the next day. Ganalola. Sheshamma Raju, the elder brother of Satyanarayana, married the daughter of Sri Pashupati Subbaraju of Kamalapur in Chundapa district. And since Satya had to proceed somewhere outside Bukkapatnam for higher education, it was proposed that he might as well go over to Kamalapur. The brother was also with him there for some time, and so this arrangement seemed satisfactory to the parents, who agreed. They planned to give Satya a college education so that he might become an officer, and hence they were prepared to part with him and send him to far-off Kamalapur, provided his studies could be continued. Satya too attended school regularly. He was in Kamalapur as at Bukkapatnam, a quiet, well-behaved boy, the favorite of his teachers. He sang the prayer song before the curtain went up on the occasion of a drama in the town, and those who heard his sweet voice spread the news that the fine musician had come to town. Prayer songs at functions like public meetings became his monopoly thereafter. Baba speaks even today of a drill instructor who commanded the respect of the entire school by his instinct love for children. He was also the scoutmaster, and he was anxious to have Satya in his troop. So he started persuading the boy directly and through his friends. There were two boys, children of the Sheristeder, who sat at the same desk and who were very friendly with Satya. They also pleaded with him and even thrust a nice new pair of scout shirts and knickers into the desk of Satya so that he might join. They all knew that Satya would be the life of the troop, and he joined it. And if he joined it, the elders of the town would too agree to sponsor it. Otherwise, they might make it to a group of idlers and do nothing, intend only on hikes and dinners. Satya joined at last, just in time to proceed to the fair and cattle show at Pushpagiri, to which the drill master planned to take his troop. There was work enough for the boys at Pushpagiri, with the huge crowds that gathered, restore the children that might get lost, supply of drinking water to the pilgrims, supervision and sanitation, and provide first aid on the spot at the cattle fair. The camp fee was fixed at 10 rupees per boy. Satya did not have a pie. He had to demonstrate that seva was his own reward, that prema would overpower everything else. He decided that the chance to teach and inspire his companions should not be lost. So he determined to walk to Pushpagiri, thus saving the bus fare. He told the drill master that his people were coming for the fair and that they would look after him. Of course, the people who come for every jatra are his people. And thus, he avoided the camp mess and the charges he had to pay if he had joined it. He calculated that 5 rupees would be enough to see him through at Pushpagiri, and he says he gave the set of books of the previous class, which he had seldom read and which therefore were as good as new, to a needy boy, and took from him not the 12 rupees he offered, but just the 5 rupees he required. Then he walked the distance of Pushpagiri, reaching the place about 9 o'clock in the night, the day previous to the inauguration of the fair. He was physically very much tired, and with the bag containing his clothes and the money, he slept on the sand of the river, along with the huge concourse that had already gathered there. The next morning, when he woke up, the purse had gone, along with the bag. While describing these incidents, Baba often tells those around him that he was not worried at all, but that he moved about the place quiet, unconcerned, and found on a stone trough an Anna coin and the packet of beedies. He took the coin, it seems, and proceeded to the marketplace. There was a man there who sat in front of the contraption, promising profit to men with luck. On a circle drawn on a piece of black cloth in a white paint, he had some hieroglyphics. He had attached some monetary value to a few figures and no value at all to the rest. He had an iron rod sticking up from the center and a movable needle on its top. He asked his customers to place a coin beside him and give the needle quick turn. If the needle stops on a top of a section which has figure like 2, 3, and 4, he gives the customer double or treble or 4 times the stake amount. Otherwise, he appropriates it. Satyanarayana went straight to this man and turning the needle a number of times, and always with luck of his favor, collected 12 annas. He says that he could have secured more, but he sympathized with the poor fellow whose earnings were not much. Those 12 annas sufficed him for a week. For, as already mentioned, he had a miraculous power not only of feeding himself, in fact, the happiness of those around him is his food, as he has so often said, but also proving that he had a square meal by extending his hand to be smelt. Even in these later years, he sometimes says, I have taken lunch, and when people doubt it, he allows them to smell his palm, and they will have to cast aside their doubts. So the scoutmaster was led to believe that Satyanarayana was being well fed by his relatives at the fair. He did not make any distinction, therefore, in assigning work between Satya and the rest. Satya entered enthusiastically upon his task of inspiring his classmates to do selfless social service. Even today, this is a central theme of his teaching, service to others being. As he says, service to oneself, for the other is only oneself in another form and under another name. Needless to say, Satya quietly slipped out of the camp when they proposed to take him back by bus, for he had not paid his share of the bus fare. He walked back to the whole distance as a matter of principle. Baba as a boy of 17 years. Satya at Kamalapur was away from parents. Even his brother had gone to undergo a training course. And so, whenever he wanted some odd cash, he wrote, as he says, songs for the use of a merchant, Koti Subbanna by name. Subbanna had a shop selling medicines, tonics, glasswares, articles of fashionable wear, umbrellas, etc. And whenever he desired to push a new article into the market or boost the sales of some patent drug, he caught Satya on the road leading to the school and gave him the necessary technical and other information. By evening, Satya was ready with an attractive Telugu song praising the stuff in really good poetry, full of swerve and lilt, capable of catching the ear when sung in chorus by the band of urchins whom Subbanna hired for the purpose. They used to march along the streets with the name boards in their hands, singing the slogan-filled song of Satya and evidently enjoying their task. Even now, Baba regales his bhaktas now and then by the recitation of these old-time tunes. Koti Subbanna gave Satya in return for these songs, which soon danced on every tongue, the clothes, books, and other things needed by him. There is a saying current among the older of the devotees of Sri Satya Sai Baba. He manifested himself at Uravakonda, but spread his glory from Kamalapur. This statement is a tribute to the quickness with which the people of Kamalapur responded later to the call without the cynicism of ignorant conceit and the large number of public receptions and pujas they organized to Balasai after his return to Puttaparthi. Meanwhile, we too must hurry towards Uravakonda, where the next chapter of this divine saga is to be enacted. Sheshamma Raju completed the training prescribed to qualify him as a teacher of Telugu, and he was posted to the high school at Uravakonda. He welcomed this as a good omen, for he could have Satya with him and give personal and immediate attention to the progress of his higher studies.
Thank you, Sister Vani and Sister Geeta, for reading the chapters today. And we will end here with Sai Gayatri and Samastaloka. Om Saishwaraya Vidmahe